Alrighty. Welcome to a special presentation, Pearl and Andy Lockwood, Lockwood College Prep, or shall I say, Madam Pearl and Soothsaying Andy. We're making our predictions. Pearl, you have your own prop over there. Don't look at mine.
Oh.
Yeah. What is your crystal ball saying about tonight's webinar?
Oh, boy. It's going to be a good one.
I actually can't really see the 8-ball at all.
Maybe you need glasses.
Is that your prediction?
I'm predicting that, yes.
Yeah, I can't read this at all. Outlook may be blurry. These magic 8-balls really shrank. So, all right. So welcome to our predictions, our annual predictions webinar. We've been doing these, I believe, 5 years. Wow. It's our 5th year. Yeah. And the good thing is that I don't think anyone keeps track of our predictions or pays attention to them. So
but they're all coming true. But every last one of them.
I certainly feel free to say anything I want. So let me see who is here with us. Hello to Bernie. God, my eyes are bad. Amy,
Glasses.
Christina, David. All right, good. Stuart from snowy Syracuse. All right, good. So we're testing out a new platform, a new webinar platform, which I've been on as a viewer of other people who've been using this one. So it works great. The bad news is that the plan that we have capped us at 150 people to register. So I don't know how many people are actually going to come on, but we maxed out like 2 days ago. So you, as our guest, should feel very honored that you made the cut and you're here to share in the knowledge and the goofy jokes and embarrassment.
Your hat looks like either you stepped on a piece of toilet paper or you have your underwear hanging out or something. But this.
Okay. Now listen, you could have told me that.
All right, we're good.
You could have told me that when we went upstairs and annoyed and embarrassed our daughter who has friends over.
Right.
But you chose not to. You could have told me the 5 minutes before that when we were dressed, but you waited till we were on the air to do that. I did.
I thought this was the best time.
Okay, good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So even though it looks like we're ready to make some predictions, I thought first what we would do would be to buzz through some of the latest and not greatest changes to the financial aid formula, specifically the FAFSA. Recently, I think it was last week, the Department of Ed announced that they are really overhauling the FAFSA. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that's we want to make sure that you understand, such as not only how it's changing, but when it's changing. Mm-hmm. Then I think there's a bunch of stuff that's not really going to matter, but some stuff does matter. It really depends on your situation. So do you want to? Why don't we start off with when did these changes take place, and then we'll talk about what some of them are.
Okay, so if for the current high school 10th graders, when those students are seniors and applying for school, their year is going to be the first year when the new FAFSA takes effect.
So that is the 23-24
That's right.
FAFSA season.
That's right.
So if people who are graduating in 2023.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And will affect, obviously, any student that is already enrolled in school at that time for the going forward aid season.
Good. Okay. So so one of the big changes was they shortened. They're shortening the FAFSA dramatically from 108 questions to about 36. My understanding is a lot of the questions that they got rid of were didn't pertain to 99% of the people who filed them. So that might be a good thing. But there's also more of a linkage now to the IRS than before. So give us your comments, and I'll just shut up for a minute.
Okay. Well, in terms of, first of all, just to touch on what they got rid of, a lot of the things they got rid of were sort of dated, and I'd been getting questions over the years like, what is registering for selective service? Yeah, the draft. So they got rid of that in the new FAFSA. They are no longer forcing you to register if you are a male to register for selective service, which means essentially that you're signing up for the draft. So they got rid of that, which is well, I'll just leave it out there. It is a change.
We have a long show. We have two webinars in one.
We have, and also another change. If it it had always seemed, and also provoked a lot of questions. If you've been convicted of a drug offense, et cetera, as of right now, you are not eligible for federal aid, and they are omitting that requirement as well. So now, if you have been convicted of a drug conviction, you are now eligible even if you've been convicted.
All right, so let me jump in with some stuff that I think is going to pertain more to our clients.
I'm going to get into.
Let's talk about number of children in college.
Let's
talk about EFC, and let's talk about divorce.
Okay, so. They are changing the name of the EFC, which stands for Expected Family Contribution, which was the number that would be spit out of your confirmation when you submit a FAFSA, taking into account computing your income, your assets, parent income, parent assets, student income, student assets, how many kids in school. That's the way it currently exists. All these items come in together, and then when you submit your FAFSA, it meets out a confirmation email which has your expected family contribution, which is a number. Okay, they're getting rid of the EFC number, and they are now changing the name. And I guess what goes into that remains to be seen, but it is going to be called a Student Aid Index, SAI, a Student Aid Index, is replacing the EFC. Okay.
Why do you think that is? Because I have my own theories.
I'll yield to your theory first. I'm not really sure, but I.
So in terms of how they calculate it, it's really the same. I mean, there are some modifications, but it's not going to make college more affordable for anybody.
No.
I think the term expected family contribution had this air of this is what we expect you to pay, and this is therefore parents assumed that's what they would pay.
Right.
But more often than not, their expectations were dashed, because colleges engage in what's called gapping. You might have an expected family contribution of $40,000 for a college that costs $80,000. They may not give you all that 40. They may give you 30 of it. So you're going to pay the 30 plus the 10, which is the gap between your expected family contribution and the award, plus the rest of college. So I think that's one reason behind the changes. Just reading through some of the legislative history and listening in on what some other experts who don't wear costumes, therefore aren't as credible as we are, have said about this over the last few days. But I saw some argument that this is really to make parents pay who can pay. And some of these other changes,
right,
to pay more, so therefore students have to borrow less. And I'm thinking, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Even in non-pandemic times, I don't think the problem is that parents are opting, at least in our little world, that parents are choosing to make their kids take on more loans. I just think they don't have the money, period, because college is so exorbitantly expensive.
Right.
So I heard a couple of commentators give that opinion, and I was wondering what planet they were living on, because we're certainly in a different reality. But talk about number of children in college, because that's a big one.
This is a really big one. Okay, so right now, just very quickly, the formula for aid is the cost of attendance at a particular school, minus your EFC, your expected family contribution, to be named SAI, exactly, equals your need, your demonstrated need at that school. Now, if your cost of attendance at a school is $80,000 and your EFC with one student in college is $40,000, then you are demonstrating approximately $40,000 of need at that institution. If you have the exact same facts, income, assets, everything the same, but instead of only having one student in college, you have now two children in college at the same time. Right now, the way the rules work, your EFC of $40,000 for that same family becomes an EFC of $20,000 for each of those students, thereby having each of those students qualify for a whole lot more need at those respective schools.
And that's because the F stands for family, so
right.
So it gets split between the two kids.
The theory is exactly that there isn't more money when you have additional children, that it's the same pot of money that is being divvied up, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, however many. That number from that family contribution is the same. That is going away with the new FAFSA. So that means
And again, in 20, if you're just joining us,
Right.
these are changes that
not this
take
year,
place.
not next year,
Yeah.
the following year, it will take effect. So when you submit your FAFSA, and maybe you were hoping
Well, it's
that
the fall. It's next year. It's the fall of 22. Sure
not-
it is. It's just for kids who graduate 23, 24.
right, but it's not next applying year. It's not next year. Our daughter, who's now in 10th, this will affect her when she's in 12.
For kids who graduate
when she-
23,
Right.
they're doing their FAFSAs in October 22. That's a year from now.
Okay.
Year and a half.
It's okay. Anywho, this is not germane. Okay. So the point
I just want to be
is, the
clear.
thing
It's
that
for sophomores.
they are getting rid of
Yeah.
is they are no longer giving you that break for having multiple children in school at the same time, because they thought it was unfairly assisting or penalizing, or whichever family you want to look at this at. They were unfairly penalizing families that did not have their children close together and therefore would be in school at the same time.
I read it was actually Lamar Alexander, who's the outgoing senator. I don't know if he was on finance or education. I can't remember, but he felt the former, that
Mhm.
you shouldn't be rewarded for having your kids close together.
Right. Exactly. So
That was one of his pet issues, apparently.
right. So the big changes for many
Ridiculous.
families who, let's say, were hoping that, maybe I didn't qualify with one kid in school, but then, when my first kid is going to be a junior, now my other kid's going to be, those families up until this point really have seen breaks as they had multiple kids in school. That's going away.
Which was one of the few things that I thought reflected reality in the financial
Yes.
aid formulas, which were always wacky. So starting in the calendar year, the FAFSA year 23-24, again for sophomores, 10th graders now who graduate in 2023, that's no longer the case. And I think that's messed up. By the way, right now we're only talking about the FAFSA.
I was just
We're
going
not
to
talking
say
about,
that.
oh my God.
I really was.
You are psychic.
It's these hats. Well, I'm not wearing a hat. It's these costumes.
Headwear.
Okay.
So
that's true.
The CSS profile is a little bit different. Well, it's a lot different. So far, we don't think it's changing at all. I mean, I don't see any evidence that it's going to change.
Right. They're in a
The
wait and see.
CSS profile, just for you newbies to the process, roughly 400 colleges require it. It's 10 times as long as the goal is not.
Most
so
of the competitive schools.
the goal
require
of the FAFSA and the Department of Ed was to streamline and make things simpler. The goal that the College Board has to make the CSS profile for these 400 colleges is to make it more complicated, because the FAFSA is not enough information for these colleges that have their own money. Anyway, their version of having multiple kids in school and their formula doesn't work exactly like the FAFSA. Instead of giving like a 2-for-1 deal, it's more like 40% off for the second kid. I don't think that's going to change, but we'll see.
Right. So basically,
I could ask my
these
8-ball.
changes are going to
Will the
affect
College Board-
those who are applying to FAFSA only schools, which there are about 4,000 schools out there. They all take the FAFSA, and then a subset, about 400, as Andy already pointed out,
Soothsaying Andy.
soothsaying Andy, require this additional form, the CSS profile. Your FAFSA determines your federal eligibility for aid. The CSS profile determines your institutional eligibility for aid at that school. And as of now, that institutional aid analysis is not changing like the FAFSA has so far.
Can
Okay.
I point you in the direction of talking about divorce?
Yes.
And then we want to talk about untaxed income.
Yes.
And then we want to talk about support from grandparents.
All right. Let's do it. All right.
Divorce.
Let's unpack the whole divorce separated bit.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Put in your comments. Go ahead and lob them in the comment section. Somehow I will be able to read them at some point, but just lob them in, save them for when we come to a stopping point after predictions and news and weather. or just predictions.
Okay. All righty. Huge changes. All right. Right now, the rule is as follows: in determining in a separation or a divorce, and a separation need not be formalized. It can be an informal. We are separated today. We are separated.
What?
Not us. And for all of those people separated informally or formally, divorced, if you are in those categories, then the custodial parent, the information from the custodial parent only is to be provided on the FAFSA. Who's the custodial parent now? Well, right now, the rule is it is the parent with whom the student resides with greater than 50% of the time for this last calendar year when you're filling out this form. Now, the rule is, or what it's going to be, is the custodial parent is determined by which parent claims that student on his or her tax return.
Which was irrelevant before.
Which was totally irrelevant, right?
But now there's more of a meshing of the Department of Ed FAFSA rules and the IRS.
So basically, it is the parent who is most financially providing for in the calendar year, in the base year, the same tax year. That is the judge. So it's not, they don't want these quick changes in the last minute, like today I'm filing the FAFSA. Today I live with this parent, or this parent's been financially supporting me. It is, so for this year, 2019 is the base tax return for the financial aid forms, which means in 2 years, when this new FAFSA takes place, it's going to be your 2021, the income year that we are currently in. It is going to be this tax return that is going to be your base return for which these formulas will rely upon.
So they call it prior. It means it's a 2-year income, look back. So what that means, and this is, we want to get this message out to any of our, community who is a divorce attorney. We have a lot of those who, you have a very good friend who's a divorce attorney. So I don't know if you told her about this yet.
I did.
Good. So that
she couldn't get on either.
If you're, because we maxed out.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll do this. We're trying to record this, so hopefully this is going to be shown again and again, like cats. So
better.
If you are involved in negotiating a settlement agreement right now, then maybe it behooves you, and this is an issue, to lobby for the low income family or the mom or whoever to be the one taking the kids as a dependent. Of course, there's trade-offs, and we're not getting into legal advice and all that, but that's how you maximize your financial aid, by giving the low income parent the deduction. But is that, again, is that going to be practical? If, in the whole scheme of things in the divorce, maybe not. That's for other people to decide.
Right. More changes with divorce. Okay. Currently, child support is treated as untaxed income, which does get added back into the formula for financial aid purposes.
Child support received
by
the custodial parent.
By the custodial parent, exactly, is currently treated as untaxed income. With the new FAFSA, that is going to change, and
prediction:
the child support is going to be treated as a parent asset.
Yeah, so that was one thing I didn't have a real clear handle on.
Right.
So let's say they pay out.
It's actually going to be more favorable.
That I understand, but if someone pays out $30,000 in child support,
right,
does that mean it gets assessed at 5.64%? Is that what that means?
That's what that means now.
Or does it mean once it goes to the bank, then you treat it like a regular asset, which is still 5.64%?
No, it doesn't mean it comes in and then you spend it and then whatever's left.
I don't know.
No,
that's not clear to me.
It's clear. Whatever is earmarked and received in the calendar year, as child support, whatever that figure is going to be like another line item in a parent asset field, like the 529, like a trust, like a CD, like a something.
So what we're talking about is, under the current rules, before things change in 2023, just in case you're joining us late and you're wondering why we're dressed like this, we are going to get to some predictions.
We're getting to why we're dressed up.
We do this annually, yes. but we had to come. We almost had to make 2 webinars into one, because as we were getting ready for our predictions webinar, the Department of Ed surprised us, even though we're psychic, and came out with these rules. Anyway, when untaxed income under the current system came in to a custodial parent, anywhere from 22 to 47% of that was assessed, meaning their eligibility, they lost eligibility between 22 to 47% of that amount. So let's say it's $30,000 that came in, they would lose up to, $13,000 worth of worth of eligibility. Now, instead of losing $13,000, they're only going to lose about 5% and change of that $30,000 or $1,500. So the penalty is much less severe. That's a good thing for people receiving child support, because not only are they not taxed by the IRS, but they're not assessed as much as they were under the, what soon will be the old rules. Right.
It was definitely a greater penalty when it was categorized as an untaxed income item as opposed to a parent asset.
Other untaxed income is also going to be exempt. Also, like workers' comp and veterans benefits. Before, those were, maybe even pensions, I'm not positive about that one, but before, those were assessed at the regular income penalty, but now they're completely exempt. So that's another good thing.
Yes. Okay, here's another tidbit on the separation divorce bit. Right now, under the current rules, if someone is separated, and just in thought, does not need to be formalized, they can treat it just the same as a divorce situation, parsing out the custodial parent's income and asset information, provide that on the FAFSA, submit, base everything on that custodial parent, simply because this parent has said, we're separated as of this date, with no other formality to it. That is going away.
And I actually would argue, possibly for good reason, because there's a lot of abuse with that.
Yes.
We have, I'm not going to name names, of course, but we knew for some reason a shockingly large number of separated families who lived in the same household. They didn't have any legal separation.
Right.
So I think a lot of financial aid offices also had that experience, and they kind of got sick of parents trying to game the system a little bit.
That's correct.
So now. And this is also more in line with the IRS rules.
Yes.
Now you have to be formally separated or legally divorced.
Or you are considered married. Period. End of story. No ifs, ands, or buts. Even if someone moved out, if you are not formally separated with a separation agreement, you're married.
And again, that's another example of them, I think, linking up the IRS data with the FAFSA data. Because when you're filing with a joint return, that's going to, but you claim that you're separated, that's going to be evidence that you are still sharing expenses and therefore have more resources to be able to pay for college.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. A few last tidbits on some of the changes. Now the Pell Grant eligibility is if a married family with one dependent in school has an adjusted gross income of less than $38,000, that is what will set the eligibility for the Pell Grant.
There's also a lower income amount for whether you are exempt from disclosing assets. Did you catch that? So the FAFSA asks you about income and assets, but if you're below a certain ceiling, you don't have to disclose assets.
Right. That's true now.
But they changed it to $60,000 for families. And if you are a business owner and you show profits of $10,000 or less, then you won't be asked any questions about your assets.
Okay.
Can we talk about grandparents?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Oh, you don't know?
Oh, I know.
Oh.
So right now, if a grandparent pays for, let's say a grandparent has set up a 529 plan for their grandchild and they use it to pay the school, that payment is going to be represented in that student's future financial aid forms as having received income, and it is the strictest penalty. So it severely penalizes when a grandparent, for example, benefits the student that way.
So let's use numbers. If a grandparent, no, that's great. I mean, if a grandparent pays $40,000, the following year the child's EFC, which is changing, but their eligibility will be reduced by half of that, or $20,000. That's under the old, current, soon to be old, outdated FAFSA rules. Now, starting 2023, what's the effect?
They are not going to count it.
Zero. That is a big change, a big exemption. That's a good one.
Yep, that is a good one.
Right?
Yes, and there is a new question on the FAFSA,
Aha.
and that asks the student to indicate what their race and ethnicity are.
What? How they identify or what it actually is?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I believe what it actually is, but it's being asked. It is currently not on the financial aid forms. What is your race? What is your ethnicity?
Why do you think they're asking that, Madam Pearl?
Wow, what a great segue into our predictions.
I'm just asking you.
I think that they.
Come on. Pearl's going back into her echo chamber.
I believe that they want to make decisions, financial aid decisions, based on someone's race or ethnicity. Why else would they ask the question?
Is everything like
that
with you?
If they didn't need it for that. Well, that's expressly what this form does. Financial aid forms are to determine who gets aid. So if they want to know what your color is and what your ethnicity, then I guess they're using those factors, which I don't know if things have changed, but when I was in law school, I thought that was called discrimination. But
all right, so let me propose an alternative theory to you. It's not mine. I happen to think that this one might be true also. Because by the way, if you're discriminating against one,
I'm getting canceled.
We're not on Facebook. It's okay. If you're discriminating against one side, then you can for one side, then you can prove discrimination against the other side. Just saying that.
That's correct.
That's
right. Unless you take it off the table.
My preferred, maybe Pollyannish explanation is that they are doing this to monitor, to try to match up and see where the money goes, because it's really these rules are really designed to help low-income families get the money. So in a few years we'll have a better idea of who's actually getting the money or not. But if some enterprising ethnicity thinks that they were hosed with financial aid, and they can somehow through some sort of Fair Information Disclosure Act type of stuff get a handle on who got money and who didn't. So
good time to be a discrimination lawyer.
Well, I can't. I mean, again, naive, whatever. I can't imagine that anyone would set themselves up like this and raise this huge red flag. But stranger things have happened, haven't they?
Yes.
Before we get to the predictions, which is coming up after local news, weather, and sports,
and a commercial break, of course, from our sponsors, our corporate sponsors.
Right. We lost all of our sponsors with Pearl's last comment there.
Sorry,
but we didn't. We doubled them also. It's easier to make an appeal now. There's more leniency.
Right.
I'm sorry, not now. Again, we're talking about these changes that are going to take place. Again, I know people come on and off.
Right.
So if you're just joining us, we're talking about changes to the FAFSA that take place in a year and a half, and for kids who graduate in 2023 for the 2023-24 season. So any sophomores now who are class of 23, these pertain to you, and any families who have kids in college that year. Those sophomores go to college, and forever until they change the rules again. These pertain to you. Now, there's in general, financial aid officers have what's termed professional judgment to consider special circumstances, to make adjustments. And now it's going to be a little easier for them to make those adjustments. For example, if a family, just to use a real example. So let's say you have a sophomore now graduates in 2023, and when they apply to college, let's say the family doesn't have any income because the mom or the dad or whatever is like. I hope to God it's not COVID still at that point, but it could be. Who knows?
Well, it'll be the 2021 year base year that they're using. So
I'm talking about I'm talking about the opposite. So let's say that and when they're applying in October of 22 for the 23 season, that they don't have a job at that point, and the tax returns that they're pulling data from in 21, they showed income. Well, the financial aid officer has the discretion to treat their income then as zero. That's now written into the new rules.
That's good.
So before, the burden was on people who applied for aid and people like me who write a lot of appeal letters and all that to overcome to rebut that presumption, so to speak. But now they have professional discretion to be able to do that. Same thing with if they see that the family was on unemployment benefits, their tax return, they can also automatically reduce their income to zero without having to go through all kinds of hoops.
By the way, and then just to circle back, what that also brings up. So right now, when we use within the FAFSA, the IRS DRT, which stands for IRS Data Retrieval Tool.
Internal Revenue Service Data Retrieval Tool.
That's true. Sorry. What that tool does is it takes your actually filed tax return information with the IRS from the IRS site, and it ports it directly into your FAFSA seamlessly. In fact, when it presents in the FAFSA, it doesn't even show you numbers. It literally just says the words transferred by the IRS, transferred by the IRS. So you can't verify that they transferred
correctly. By the way, is that good or bad?
Which part?
That all that it goes in and you can't see it.
Well, if you have total confidence that
No, in your experience, is that a good or a bad thing?
When they are, well, okay. Its original purpose, it's both. It depends. If it's working properly, then it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's good until it's not.
It's good until it's not.
We have a client right now.
We had a client this week. And so think of it this way. The IRS DRT, it's like a calculator. If you put certain numbers in, 2 + 2 + 2, push the equal sign, it's going to say 6. So in a similar fashion, the IRS DRT works where you put the identity, the social security number of the parents into this hopper, and it pulls, supposedly, like a calculator, all of the information that was actually filed on and it puts it right into your FAFSA. You think, you hope, you believe, you're led to believe, and we thought so until this week. I have 2 siblings who have the same parents. And
virtually the same.
The only difference between it's a brother and a sister. It's not even worth
describing. There's so little difference between the two. What was their EFC difference?
Their EFC difference. So the only difference between the 2 kids was like one kid earned $1,000 and the other kid whatever.
Had to say it.
I did because the number is important. Their EFC came out to be $7,400 different from one another. With no. I've perused these 2 student aid reports over and over again. I've asked my colleagues in the field. The only answer that makes any reasonable sense is that the DRT itself is flawed. Like if you were doing math on a calculator that was broken and you kept hitting 2 + 2 + 2 and it kept saying 7, that's what's happening. That is what happened here. And I can share with you that the future of the FAFSA is going to be pulling even more information from your tax return so that most of your submitted FAFSA is going to be kind of out of your hands and pulled in completely from your tax return with which you hope are corrective numbers and information and whatever. But that is where all these other items besides just your straight income tax and your untaxed income and whatever, but this is where your unemployment, your dependents, they're not going to allow you to include in terms of numbers of kids in school anyone who's not on your tax return.
But they will still ask about number of kids in school. It's just they're not going to count that in the student aid report. That's what's interesting to me.
But I'm saying they're not considering anybody in your household anymore unless they're on your tax return.
Right. That's also true.
Right.
So to round out this discussion, this is not the first time Pearl has noticed a problem with the IRS data retrieval tool.
This was just
So
nuts.
Listen, I think that change overall is probably a good thing, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have screwy results that they don't deserve. Their student aid indexes are going to be too high, and they won't know the difference. That's really going to be the problem. They won't know how to.
This is where I gave my Theranos comparison,
That was a good one.
right?
Yeah.
That was like the box.
Calculator's a better one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Just things you think you depend on, you have a right to rely on, you may not be able to. So
Like
So
honestly, the last thought was that the mechanics of it were flawed, but that's actually
the
what
software was
happened.
wrong, or you made a mistake. None of that was true.
Right.
But that's, that is bound to happen
Yeah.
when they overhaul the formulas, because it always does. So, we're a little far out in front of this right now because it doesn't happen until 2023, but I guarantee that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And my last thing I just wanted to say, which we touched on already, before we get to part 2, predictions, is that, again, just because I know people are coming in, coming out, we're talking about FAFSA changes for 2023. So next year, none of these takes effect. We are not talking about CSS profile changes. Most, not all, but the vast majority of our clients apply to colleges that take the CSS profile, which is much more complicated, right, and it's unlikely to change.
Right.
And the clients that we have most likely would not have qualified for federal aid anyway, but they
right.
would certainly, and they continue to get institutional money from colleges that have money, which tends to be the private schools, and they tend to be CSS profile schools. So far, no changes on the horizon, but of course, we'll keep you up to date, perhaps in costume. Hopefully not, because this thing is starting to hurt my head again. Okay. All right, Pearl. So there's a lot of questions coming in here. I don't know how we're possibly going to be able to answer all of these.
Okay.
But
we'll try.
We will try. So if we don't get all of them, then either we'll do a follow-up sort of Q&A, or I'll just email out some of the Q&A. We'll figure it out. So don't be stressed out. And if we managed to record this correctly, and you are actually watching an encore presentation of this, same deal. If we can't answer your questions while that's happening, because we will be live, then we'll get to them later. So now let's come up with some predictions, our 5th annual predictions for the college world. Again, we urge you not to write these down because we don't want anyone checking on them. But each year for the last 5 years, we've been making predictions, and sometimes they come true. And Pearl, do you want to do, how many do you have? 7?
Yeah, but some are like subsets.
Okay, so why don't you run through all yours, and I have 5. So instead of switching off, you do yours first. Right, but just before we start there, if anyone is interested in chatting with us about, getting help after we get out of these idiotic garbs, then you can do so by applying for a free session. We don't charge for the initial consultation, 20 minutes on the phone, and we make you fill out a quick application just to see if we can help you. It's really for serious inquiries only. If you're interested in working to get help paying for college, or with our team to help you get in to college, or the whole process. We have a lot of people recently who've hired us. So I'm so overwhelmed. I grew up in a different country, or I grew up here, but everything's changed in the last 30 years. I have no idea where to start. With the pandemic and no college visits and all the, I don't even know what the right questions to ask. Yeah, test prep. So if you have any questions about that, there's no obligation, but serious inquiries only. You can go ahead and complete the application if you just click on I guess it's a black button on the screen. You can book a free college strategy session. If by the time you get to our calendar for these, you can't find a spot, then just email us, because they go pretty quickly. This is a crazy time of year for us, and we book up. I'm almost done taking on 2022 kids. Personally, we still have a team of advisors who can help, and we're looking for anyone who wants some help with either the financial aid, which is primarily Pearl, but also the overall college advising process from soup to nuts.
Okay.
All right. Prediction number 1.
Prediction number 1. Okay. Well, on the heels of which seems like a rather obvious one, given that in the last year we have had bold new experiences with technology in not only at the college level, but at any educational level.
This is a long prediction. Nostradamus.
Okay. Well,
What is
anyway.
it? What is your
that
prediction?
The prediction is going to be that there will be, now that we were forced by situation to rely on technology for delivering education more going forward, we're going, that schools will, you know what, this, are you kidding me? I'm going to flick that hat off of you in a second. That through that necessity, they have learned that it is probably a lot more cost effective to disseminate their education through technology. And I think that will continue to increase, that they're going to continue to use and teach by online mechanisms that just give them more variety, and they can less infrastructure, more technology. That is my prediction, number one. And
I will say not so fast, because there's so many parents who are saying this sucks. I am not paying $75,000 for my kid to sit in a Zoom class. And this is not why we're signing up. So much of college is about the this and that and the other thing. Yeah. And so far, it's pretty universal that the online instruction has tanked. Virtually anyone who's involved with that, not just in college, but also in high school and middle school, has rated it very poorly. I don't think there's going to be such a quick switch over.
I'm not sure that it's going to be a substitution, but what I do think is because
you're walking it back, aren't you?
No, because of the pandemic, schools and institutions were forced to rely heavily on technology. No, I don't think that's going to, going forward, replace. We all know what the damages have been, but there is going to be an opportunity for some of the benefits that were had using technology. Overall, I think there will be a trend to use more technology. I don't mean right this minute while we're in a pandemic and shut down, we're on lockdowns. I don't mean that.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Number two.
So we know that before the pandemic,
make that prediction and then you can explain it.
Consolidation, my prediction. There will be a merger partnership of smaller liberal arts colleges that are financially failing in order to stay alive. And before they kick the bucket entirely, I think that they will collaborate. Small liberal arts school will collaborate with one another to keep each other alive. So I also think to that end, because of the vulnerable small liberal arts schools, I think we will see an increase in corporate sponsorships of education.
That's a separate prediction.
Corporations are going to enter this market, and it's going to be, a new type of corporate sponsorship.
Philosophy 101, sponsored by Microsoft.
Exactly. That's right. Another prediction, based on most recent... Yes.
What's the prediction?
The prediction is there is going to be de facto less money available and team spots for women in college athletics.
People who identify as women or actual women?
People who are biologically born women who are now competing with transgender men who identify or transitioning to women who now can compete
as
women. So that is my prediction.
And I didn't catch, I don't know, maybe you did, but I didn't catch, there were some Title IX revisions. I think that made it open to transgender athletes. I guess that was the gist of it.
Yes.
And, so first of all, with athletic scholarship money, there really isn't a whole lot to begin with. But for women, because of Title IX, there tended to be more in sports that were kind of funky, like women's ice hockey. So now with... how many people are really going to be competing as transgender athletes? Who knows? I don't think it's going to be that much. Again, call me naive, call me Pollyannish. I don't think it's going to be this massive influx of thousands and thousands of transgender kids competing with girls and women. But it might make them less competitive, these women, when they're competing with men who are biologically more muscular and faster and all that.
Right.
So, okay.
Okay, another prediction without the wind-up this time. I think we will head to a monoculture of education, one acceptable thought in education, self-homogenizing, if you will. I think we already know that that is true, and I think that will continue to be true. Okay. Another prediction.
So you are saying that cancel culture is continuing
alive and well.
Is going to continue to rear its head.
Right. Finally, people are going to think before they speak, lest they bear the consequences. Okay. I believe that school admission is going to continue to be competitive and more competitive. We will have more international students as immigration softens on the horizon. And to that end, I also think we're going to see more early decision because students are going to try to better their chances. And I think, therefore, we'll see an increase as the competition increases as well.
Which we is very easy to envision because we're in the middle of seeing that right now. Early decision numbers were up, at virtually every competitive school, and the early results so far have been a little baffling, even for us. So, I think that's a good prediction.
Thanks. And let's see.
I'm sorry if I canceled you before.
That's okay.
If I tried to cancel culture you.
That's okay. I'm going to dig deep and stand up for myself. Let my voice be heard. Okay. Gap years, I think, will be trending into social activism years, pursuits, so that they can be more attractive to the schools that they are trying to be admitted to.
Maybe we should start a social justice warrior gap year program.
Active reprogramming workshops, perhaps?
Oh, you were waiting for that. I did not even open the door to that. Notice how she didn't say workshop.
I said woke shop.
Okay.
Your predictions.
Okay. Okay. So every year we do these predictions, and Pearl's been getting more and more bold. I am not. I'm going to say that my first prediction is that there's going to be even more discounting by colleges. Even though prices go up, the discounting rate will continue to go up, meaning discounts off of tuition. And that's a really it's kind of a wussy prediction because that has been happening every year for as long as the National Association of Collegiate Business Officers have been tracking it from like 96 or something. So this past year, I think it was 52 point something percent, and then it's going up to I think so far 58 or 59% is the average tuition discount at a private college. What I want to point out is that if you are scared off by sticker prices of private colleges, you really shouldn't be, because they tend to discount the most. And they play this game where they charge this so they don't appear like they need money, but most people don't pay that's that high amount. Roughly 20 to 25% of families will pay the sticker price, and the other 75% get some kind of discount, and the average again is over 50%. It's close to 60. Okay, that's my first prediction. You okay with that one?
So far, so good. Nostradamus.
I called you that, first of all.
Swami.
And second of all, soothsaying Andy. And second of all, I predicted you'd say that. I think number two, my second one is that there's going to be, this is related, there's going to be more haggling. Then it's going to be better to haggle. Now, I made this prediction before the rules, the announced FAFSA changes were published. And it's going to be easier to appeal and to negotiate with colleges, particularly if you have two schools or more that compete with each other, and you can play those schools off against each other. I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things to do for our clients. And I think it's going to be easier to do that because colleges, like Pearl was saying, they are under severe pressure. Some of them will be going out of business. Some of them will be consolidating. I don't think it's going to be as much as you're saying, which is my third prediction, because, well, you know what?
We will see, won't we?
Yeah, we will.
We will see.
We will see. I will see with my inner eye and my third eye. Exactly. I couldn't remember what that F it was called.
Third eye.
So you take much more yoga than I do. So I a lot of these schools are in the middle of these massive fundraising campaigns, and they're doing that in order to preserve their educational missions and stay afloat and this and that and the other thing. So I don't think there will be as much of a massive wave of consolidations and goings out of business. But that's been a trend that's been happening even before coronavirus. So I don't know if coronavirus is just catalyzing it and speeding it up, but I don't think it's going to be quite as drastic, at least in the next 12 months, that many other of my colleagues do, my fellow college planners and fellow psychics. Okay. Prediction number 4 is I am predicting the return of visiting days. This is kind of an easy one too, but colleges don't have them these days, or they shut down on them because of, for obvious reasons. However, the most important, if you ask any enrollment management person at a college, that's a real title, enrollment management, advisor or something, they would all universally say, if you were to ask them what's the most important factor in getting someone to sign up and put down a deposit and enroll in college, it's the visiting day. It's visits to the college, but also the visiting day, sometimes known as Admitted Students Day, or something along those lines, because that's when kids visualize when something intangible becomes tangible. And when you're charging, $80,000 a year or $70,000, even if you're discounting $15,000 or whatever, that's still a lot of money that rides on kids making that decision.
Yep.
And it's often the kids to influence the parents. So I think they're going to do whatever they can to make sure visiting days happen. So I'm going to predict they're going to do more of them to accommodate social distancing rules, but they're going to do whatever they can to bring those back this April. What do you think of that?
Well, I hope you're right, because that would be very exciting and much more normal feeling for many students. I do agree. I think a lot does ride on that. We look at the admissions process as, you start off with a list of schools and you want something from each of the schools on that list. You want a yes from them. So once the schools have parted with their yes and given you that yes, the schools then become very consumed with you giving them that yes back. And that is called the yield. That affects their statistics on U.S. News and World Reports, for example. So they
and their money
and their money.
Income
exactly
and their,
affects everything.
Viability, yeah.
So that is what is at the top of the school's agenda: is what can I do to know that you're going to say yes to us? And
all right.
Yeah.
All right. My last prediction, number 5, is I do not think that test optional schools is going to be the new standard. Now, it is true that over 1,000 new colleges went to test optional last year. Test optional, not test blind. And it seems like so far about 70-something% of those colleges are continuing with their anticipate continuing with their test optional policies. However, 2 things. One is that to qualify for merit aid, most colleges want scores. And I don't know if I told you this, but I was speaking to another colleague of ours from another part of the country recently, and she pointed out that when a philanthropist endows certain scholarships, they have these earmarks that they have to go to certain people, but they also have criteria, and frequently those criteria include standardized test scores. So we saw this a handful of times last year where kids that we had as clients or kids that we heard about got into a school and they didn't submit scores, but they were told, no, there's no money for you because you didn't meet that criteria to qualify for scholarships. So so test optional really isn't optional if you're looking for merit aid, in our opinion. I also think as kids go through, test optional kids who got into college, as they go through their educations, there's going to be an interesting data sample of that cohort to see actually how well they do compared to kids who had high scores who got in.
Interesting.
Currently, the thought is that they're not a super accurate predictor. There's other things that are more accurate in terms of predicting how well someone's going to do in college. But those are usually socioeconomic factors, including whether your parents went to school, what school district you're from, and things like that. No, they're not fair, but those are just the things that seem to really matter. So those are my 5 predictions. More discounting, more haggling, not as many colleges going out of business as you think, The return of visiting day and test optional is not going to be purely test optional. We're not going to say goodbye to the SAT and all the money the College Board makes off those tests. Likewise for the ACT. Shall we go to some questions?
Sure.
All right. So let's do that. And then I'll put that up. Again, if you're interested in talking to us, you should probably move over a little bit closer to me so you're not blocked out here.
Okay.
Or if I could somehow make the camera lower. I don't know if I can do that. But if you were interested in talking to us about your college plan, by all means, book a college strategy session. All right, so I have to make this screen brighter here. Let's go through some questions. A lot of questions. Sid says, I've not seen Karnak in a long time. So funny. Linda is asking, is the student aid index calculated differently? Based on
more.
It is differently the way we described it, but overall it's very similar. There's just a few of these changes and stuff that we talked about. Linda says, "What? I have twins." Yeah, that's
a bummer.
That's not great. Listen, but we had a client with quintuplets years ago.
We
so
did.
Don't feel that bad. Yeah, unfortunately. And again, we're not talking about the CSS profile.
Right.
Only the FAFSA.
That's right.
Okay, Christina, do you think they will change the way they calculate demonstrated need when there are more kids in college together?
No.
Right, that's the opposite.
Right. They are no longer considering that.
Yeah.
They right this minute, they do. In 2023, when the new FAFSA takes effect, the fact that you have multiple kids in college at the same time, it will be irrelevant.
All right. Will there be some backlash? Yeah, I think there will be. This is from Ari.
One thing I know about education, they change it and they change it again and they keep on changing it. So this may be the way it is now, and 2024 may be different. That's another prediction. I predict that they're going to change it and change it and change it because it gives. Well, I'll keep my cynicism out of this because they have. Right? Yeah. Well, that was my cynicism, but they have done that. So I expect how they have behaved is how they will behave.
Okay, Ivy. I'm not sure I'm reading this right. Oh, I'm sorry. M. One kid will be in college, one will be in grad school. They're 9 years apart. How does this affect them? It won't.
Nope.
It won't affect them. Ari, my last comment was about trying to have the rule for having multiple kids in college changed before being implemented. Could there be a swell backlash against that to petition the government to modify that part? Yeah, sure, there could be, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
No,
unfortunately. Who's responsible for creating the FAFSA rules? Sorry for the newbie question. Yeah, that's not a newbie question. It's actually unclear, but it is the bureaucrats in the Department of Education. But there's a lot of committee writing.
Yeah.
You know, there's politicians. I mentioned Lamar Alexander before, who has certain policy goals. Then he has the staffers draft the rules, and then it gets implemented at the Department of Ed.
Yeah.
All right, Christina, about divorce. Will there be a grandfather clause for this? No. There's no grandfather clause. Well, that's why these changes are taking place in 23.
Right. It doesn't take effect this year, and it won't take effect next year.
Yeah.
But it just depends when your student is going to be in college. So if in 2023, that's when these new rules take effect.
Right. And again, she asked a question about the CSS profile. So far, we don't expect any changes for divorce. All right. Ari, housing allowances and parsonage monies. Yeah, that is also subject to the new rules. Those are not going to count against you. They're untaxed, but you won't be penalized for that. So you gave a lot of examples here. But I won't belabor them. What I read in the rules is that those are also not going to penalize you in the financial aid formulas. Christina, so we don't have to wait till senior year anymore to use a grandparent 529. Only after these rules take effect in 23.
Right.
Okay. Sid, is it true that the Ivies and Ivy-like schools don't give merit aid? Yes.
Yes, really.
If I was you, soothsayer, I would be careful how you speak to your Indian princess, since she has a divorce lawyer as a good friend. That is funny. That is so funny. Linda, do you say if a parent is a 529, then it'll be not held against the student and the student's income? We were talking about the grandparent 529, not counting against the student as income. The regular parent 529 doesn't have that problem.
Right.
Right.
Right now, you are penalized.
Linda, can you bypass the data retrieval tool? You do that sometimes.
Here's the deal. Sometimes the IRS DRT, data retrieval tool, does not work for one reason or another. If your marital status has changed since then it would not work. If you have an identity protection on your Social Security number, then the IRS DRT will not work. So will they just let it go? In fact, before the IRS DRT, which came about within the last 10 years before that, because we were doing forms before that, the reason they created the IRS DRT was because people could just put the numbers they wanted to manually in the forms and say, this is my income, this is my adjusted gross income, and
then the financial aid office would then review the tax returns. There'd be more of a burden on them.
Yeah. Oh, there was an amendment, whatever. Anyway,
it's more work for them.
Right. So now they have the IRS DRT, and what was the question?
Can you bypass it?
So if it doesn't work, what will end up being required of the student who is not able to successfully use the IRS DRT when they are submitting their FAFSA is they will have to order an IRS tax return transcript from the IRS, and that once it comes, that you're going to have to supply it to all of your schools, because they're going to want to see that income verified as it is with the IRS. So if it can't happen with the DRT, then you're going to get what is called an income verification, wherein you're going to have to order the IRS tax transcript for that year,
right?
Instead,
which is a pain in the butt, but it's just going to be part of the process,
right?
Yeah. Right now, I think 20-something% of all minimum of all filings are verified, which feels like an audit, but some schools voluntarily do 100%.
Right.
I can't believe that Sid called you an Indian princess instead of a Native American princess.
He may need a woke shop.
Or a Jewish American princess. Either way, you're my princess.
Thank you.
Okay. Paul, if I file my 2020 taxes in February, how long will it take to be used by the FAFSA?
You cannot opt for a tax year that
choose.
You want.
Yeah.
Right. Like right now, if you're applying for aid for the 21-22 school year that begins next fall, you must use the 2019 tax return, period.
Which
even if
a year ago.
Very soon you file your 2020 tax return, and therefore then you do your FAFSA, you still need to use your 2019 tax return.
Yeah, it's not a choice. It's a mandatory.
Yep.
Here's what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of agreement with you on your predictions on the Zoom and all kinds of online learning.
Yeah.
Martha says you can see the future.
Yeah.
Ari liked the reprogramming workshops comment. Nice one, Pearl. Okay. This new platform seems to work much better than the previous one. All right, that's
cool.
Good. Yeah,
thanks for the feedback.
I'm glad it does. It's a little.
Definitely let us know.
Yeah, it's not so great for some of the things that we like to do, but I think it's much better from a viewing standpoint. So good.
Does this mean we can't dance like we were going to on this table?
No,
like we normally do?
It does not mean that. Linda, thoughts on student loan debt forgiveness? My thoughts are that it's way too early to have a thought, because there's a lot that can happen. We don't know the loan amounts, which loans,
and it's not
going to qualify, income amounts,
and not parent loans.
We don't think.
No.
Yeah. So too early. I'm dodging that question for now. But when we have more thoughts, we'll bring them out.
Right. Don't let it go into arrears just yet.
All right. Emmett, is there an income above which families don't typically qualify for aid either in the FAFSA or the CSS profile? Well, those are going to be totally different now. So the FAFSA is very low. I'd say $50,000 or $60,000.
Yeah.
on the CSS profile, it could be over 200,000 where you could still qualify depending on other circumstances, other factors. With the changes in FAFSA, do you expect more schools to begin using the CSS profile? I don't expect that. I think the College Board would like that because they make more fees.
Right.
I see that. I mean, we've been seeing a trend kind of the other way up until, currently up until now.
Yes.
Yeah. So hard to tell.
What we do see is in the freshman year, oftentimes we'll see in the freshman year, both the FAFSA and the CSS profile are required. And then as a returning student, it may only be the FAFSA. We see that trend with a lot of schools.
Sure. All right, Marcy, if we get an A package in 2021 and decide on a school, based on money offered, what happens in 2023 if the student can't afford to pay? Would it make sense to go anywhere than a SUNY? That is where I believe that schools will have to do a little finagling and grandfathering in.
Right. And reliance, because people.
But that's a great question you need to ask after you get an offer. That's a great question. If we had a question of the evening award, it would go to Marcy.
Do we have a book or something we can send her?
Yeah, we do. We do have that.
Good. Well, I was like, why don't we we normally give prizes. Just because we're doing a webinar doesn't mean we can't give her a prize.
You're right.
If she wants one.
Marcy, email me directly at ceo@lockwoodcollegeprep.com and tell me Pearl sent you. Lisa, have you heard of any news of student loan debt will be canceled for the past years and not up until coming loans? No news yet. Still in debate.
We're holding our breath.
Luciana, all right. I just talked to her the other day. I'm sending a FAFSA in fall 2021. Tax return. She's asking which tax return. 2019.
Yeah.
It's called prior. It's a 2-year look back.
Yes.
And I sent you an email. I don't know if you got that, but I sent that to you the other day. So we had a conversation. So look for that email. Bernie, how do you suggest calculating or estimating the market value of our home for the CSS profile? Low.
Right. Exactly.
Depends on where you live.
That's right. Because a fraction of the value of your home will be impugned to you on the CSS profile.
But not on the FAFSA, just to be clear.
Correct.
FAFSA does not penalize you for owning a primary
residence.
CSS profile does.
But if you have an investment property, a second home, the equity you have in that home will completely count on the FAFSA and the CSS, but on the FAFSA, even though your primary residence does not count at all on the FAFSA.
Okay. Question from Robert, then we're going to wrap up here. What type of SAT or ACT scores see merit dollars? That is all relative. It depends on where you're applying because the scores need to be higher at more competitive schools and lower at other schools.
Right. Sliding scale.
I'm going to dodge that question only because I can't answer it.
It depends on the school too.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's all relative. All right. Pearl, what do you think?
Andy.
How'd it go?
Great. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned something.
Hope you laughed. Hope we didn't cry.
Hope it was better than cats.
Hope you took us a little more seriously than we deserve with these outfits. And thanks for being part of our community and being part of the lucky 150 who made it on. Yes. And if you are watching this in replay, because we managed to record this for the encore presentation, everything we said goes for you. If you're interested in talking to us, just reach out and we'll chat if you're interested. All right. Have a good night, everyone.